bitch, you a bird, you thigh, you learn, you see, I earn, you stop. A word, I shoot, no rim, I'm high. You burn, I'm me, that's him, you not, that's word.
I think the best way to sort of do this is, I mean, why don't you introduce yourself, man? Sort of your name and sort of what is it that you do in the world of MMA that's brought you here with us today?
Well, my name is Ozzy Dugulubgov. Everybody knows me as either Coach Ozzy or just Ozzy. Um, I'm a coach working with some high-level athletes, working with amateurs, and enjoying my craft.
Exactly. So where is it that you sort of get the bulk of your work in, or are you sort of all over the place?
I do a lot of traveling when athletes invite me for training camps, seminars. I do my traveling, but I am based in Dubai at the moment. I lived in United States for the past 17 years, and recently I have moved to Dubai. I'm building my new program in Dubai right now and planning to create a system where I travel less, and majority of athletes who wants to train with me will be traveling to Dubai to do fully functional, complete training camps at my facility with me.
Gotcha. All right. So what sort of, what's the area that you like to sort of focus on as far as mixed martial arts? Is there anything specific at all or no?
No, I mean, the interesting thing, a lot of people started seeing me and recognizing me as a grappling wrestling coach for MMA.
Okay.
However, that's only a half of the expertise that I share with my clients, with my fighters. And it just happened that on the social media, some of the principles that I started sharing about grappling just blew up across the internet. And I just started posting more and more grappling things, and a lot of people just naturally assumed, hey, Ozzy is a wrestling slash grappling coach for MMA.
Right.
So that's how most of the people started knowing me and recognizing me. But I do a complete MMA program, starting with the strength and conditioning, finishing with the psychology of fighting and the strategic approach to mixed martial arts.
Great. Oh, well, thanks for that. I do appreciate you giving us some clarity on that as to what it is you do. I think that's kind of important here before we get into it. Obviously, the reason I wanted to have you on was to discuss help us break down, preview the main event of UFC 304 between Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad. I couldn't help but go on your Instagram a little bit, look through a little bit. I saw you've done some work in the past with Belal, right? Is that accurate to say?
Yes, it is. I'm actually currently in Chicago, doing some training with Bilal as well, helping
Right.
him with certain areas of the preparation for this fight. He's going through the hardest, the toughest, the most functional training camp of his life,
Yeah.
since he's preparing for the biggest fight of his life. Therefore, he doesn't hold back any resources, and his goal is not to leave any rock unturned. So he invited me here. I flew out from Dubai. I've been here already 3 weeks, and we're working on some specific stuff. And yeah, this is going to be a very interesting matchup, such a contrast of the fighters, two
Oh, yeah.
different backgrounds, two different mentalities of fighting, two different styles of fighting, um, clashing together into this exciting match. So I really can't wait to see this one. I'm thrilled to see how this will unfold.
Yeah, as am I. Absolutely. I think the last time these two guys fought, they were in very different places. Leon was still, that contender looking to get his crack at the belt. Bilal was still
Mhm.
climbing the ranks at number 13. As someone who's seen Bilal behind the scenes, like you just so eloquently mentioned, how has his evolution been since that last fight? He seems like a very different fighter. The Brady fight, the Burns fight, etc. Right? He looks very different. It feels like it's a new evolution of him. How different is he since they stepped into that cage in 2021 in your estimation?
Uh, it will be hard for me to answer how different he is now.
Okay.
However, I can say one thing for sure. Spending time with this gentleman, I see he has a strong martial arts approach to his career. And what I'm trying to say is he is not training for toughness, for strength, um, and just to be in shape. All that is included in his training to become better fighter, not just a stronger, healthier, or faster. He's actually improving his skills. He's trying to learn new things. He's trying to evolve in what he's already good at. Majority of athletes, especially at his level, they kind of maybe even subconsciously slow down and pull back on attaining new skills, acquiring new techniques, and they just focus on what they're already good at, and they just keep refining that skill. What I noticed from Bilal, this guy has in Japanese, it's called Shoshin mindset, a beginner's mindset, that he's always open for new adventures. He's always open for new ways on completing tasks that he completes very well. So, as a coach, for me, this is fascinating. I admire this so much, and it makes my job so much more functional and easier to deliver my information to him to turn that into a knowledge. So, this guy, if he does every training camp, and his off-season training the way how he trains right now, yeah, this guy is going to be evolved every fight.
So I'm looking at the record here, right? Since the no contest against Edwards, Damian Maia, Stephen Thompson, Luque, Brady, Burns. Whew, it's quite the list there. I
He's
mean, let me
he's
ask
slaying
you.
dragons. He's
Yeah,
moving up
he's in the
slaying dragons, and majority of time he's very underestimated.
yeah, he's in the belly of the beast for sure. As a coach, right, from that perspective, is there anything that's impressed you the most since that 2021 fight with Edwards? You know, is there anything that's impressed you on this run that he's been on?
I mean, it's already impressive that he's beating big names like that. Like
Absolutely.
he's going through these guys, and he's relatively using the fundamental principles of combat. Put deliberate pressure on your opponent, be alerted of the danger of the beast, yet don't hold back and just push forward and impose your will on them. This is just a fundamental principle of combat, okay? And he uses it very well, and he just seems to work on everybody so far.
Yeah, I'd say. Speaking of that first fight, anytime two guys have fought already, it definitely gives you a better understanding of what you might be able to expect in a second fight, right? Similar to Alex Pereira, Yuri Prohaska kind of went somewhat similar to the first fight. Is there anything Belal can carry over from that first meeting into the second? You know, a lot of people will say he wasn't doing that well. I see it differently. I saw a fairly competitive fight up until it was
Mhm,
stopped.
mhm.
But is there anything Belal was doing? I mean, maybe you haven't seen the fight in a while, so I don't know. But is there anything Belal can do? Anything Belal was doing in that first fight that at least had some success that maybe he can carry over? Is there anything you saw at all to your eye?
Well, every time I train an athlete, I watch his fights and his opponent's fights every 2, 3 days. I sit
Mm.
down, I spend about 30 to 90 minutes just to rewatching both of the athletes' fights. And majority of times I'm trying to watch them not as uh, red corner's coach versus blue corner, but as a person who steps back and observes both athletes with unbiased perspective. Also, I use a character of a fighter to watch both of them. I'm still young. I ended my career very early due to some health issues. Therefore, I still have the fire, the competitiveness of a fighter, of an athlete. Therefore, this can be either my downfall, my hell, or heaven. It really depends how I use it.
Right, right.
If I don't use this correctly, I will have an egoistic, prideful look at my athletes. But
Mm.
if I use this correctly, that perspective of a fighter watching another fighter will give me a good sense of what would I do against this guy. So a lot of times when I watch my own athletes, I always ask myself how I would try to beat him. And this gives me an answer on what do I need to work on with him, if that makes sense. So I always watch my athletes fights same way as I watch my athletes opponents' fights. And just 2 days ago, I was rewatching the fight between Leon and Belal,
Hmm.
and to my opinion, both of the athletes, they definitely got some insights on each other from that first fight. It didn't seem like one was winning so much and the other one was losing. This seemed very competitive exchange, very strategic exchange. And to my opinion, the fight ended right when them both started feeling like, okay, let's
Yeah,
work now.
I
That's,
agree.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Why do you think people are saying it was so one-sided? Why do you think that is?
I mean, majority of MMA fans, they are uneducated in this sport, and it's such a sport
Fair enough.
where it's such a sport where when fans are watching, it's a psychology 101. They always overestimate their knowledge and their skills when they
Especially when they have a
observe.
beer in their hand, right?
Oh yeah, that's a big boost to that one as well.
Oh yeah.
So I can't even get mad at them because it's literally inexperience and lack of education of the activity that they are observing.
Mm.
Therefore, uh, it's a fact that they will make errors. They will make some miscalculations of the actions that's what they are observing. Therefore, it's okay. Yeah, majority of people will see one way or another if they are just fans. Um, but if somebody professional takes a look at the fight and analyzes it, yeah, they will be like, yeah, the fight didn't even begin yet before the injury happened. If I just hypothetically phrase it, if
Sure.
you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were still kind of feeling each other out, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were just breaking the sweat. Look
Leon
at,
said himself that he's a slow starter too. I mean, those are his
yeah.
words. So that means that he wasn't really going yet.
I mean, Leon pushed the pace on that fight. Like he was trying to put Bilal on his heels. It was very interesting exchange from both of them. Yet, like I said, the fight ended right when it started.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something interesting that he was putting Belal on his heels. I think for Belal to have success, he's going to have to put Leon on his heels. Do you agree with that? I mean, the approach might have to change in the second fight because it seemed like Belal was on the back foot more than he usually is in fights.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, if we look at if we analyze the most dominant champions in the history of MMA, okay, at least in the history of UFC, we can see that they all share one common trait. Okay, and one of those common traits that they share is pressure. They're all pressure fighters, and one of the reasons why their ability and their success in pressure is in their skills of grappling, the ability to choose, will the fight be on the feet or on the ground. Uh, if I choose three athletes from the top of my head who share that common trait, that is George St. Pierre, John Jones, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. These athletes, they were so strong in the ability to choose where they want the fight to be, either on the feet or on the ground, that gave them a tremendous amount of functional pressure on their opponents. All right. Nevertheless, if we observe all three athletes, they have fights where the beginning of the fight, they were actually circling their opponent, moving backwards, and being very cautious and sensing the distance, sensing the dynamics and the body mechanics of their opponent. And then slowly the fight will turn into their favor and they would just be walking down their opponents. This happened many times with all three of these athletes. Therefore, uh, for Bilal to start the fight on his heels and Leon being a pressure fighter, this is a very common thing. It wouldn't mean that Bilal wouldn't be able to turn the tides the other way. But again, we would never know until the next fight.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mentioned, things that Belal can carry over from the first fight into the second fight. I think a big key for Belal in this fight is to use that grappling and get Leon against the fence. In fight one, every time Leon pushed him up against the fence, Belal actually flipped the position and put him against the fence. So, using that being able to run the clock down, hold a guy like that down that's as dangerous a striker as Leon, right? We saw what he did to Usman. One shot could put it out. Maybe some certain moments of the fight where you're grinding him up against the cage, sort of running that clock down, controlling him. I think that could help. And it looked like Belal was superior against the cage. What do you think about that?
Listen, Leon is very slicky fighter, and especially in his wall defense, he's a sleeping monster.
He's
Like
very good
when
defensively.
Yeah, he's very systematic in his defense. He doesn't do irrational thinkings. He doesn't do uh just organic reactive movements. Majority of the techniques he performs is very calculated, and you can see it was artificially gained, meaning he's not an organic grappler. All the techniques he does, it's pretty much textbook techniques, something that was attained when he was already an older fighter. Yeah, because when somebody grappled at the early age, some techniques that they do is natural. They don't even think about it. And believe it or not, sometimes they will even have a harder time explaining how they did it and why they did it. All right. With Leon, it's the opposite. Everything he does, it's conscious in the terms of his grappling defense. It's very conscious. It's and me as a coach who spends a lot of time and analyzing the techniques and trying to understand the intricacies of each technique performed in the fighting, I can see that when he does things, he's a soldier. He's a very good student who follows every step of the technique. Therefore, to some people, he seems like a not super explosive or these dynamics movements just because he's very calm in executing the tasks that was given to him in training. Yeah, when he defends, he's really good. If we look at the strategies and the fundamental goals of both of the athletes, it's very obvious. Leon needs to keep on the feet to hit Belal. Belal needs to get close and grind Leon. It's such a black and white strategy. It will really come down to how well they both will manage distance. One has to manage distance and keeping the distance. The other one has to manage the distance and decreasing the distance. Everything will come down to this.
Do you think
Whoever
that's
wins,
the you think that's the most important part of the fight?
yeah, in this fight, everything will come down to who will become the king of the distance first.
Who do you think will be the king of the distance?
Oh man, it's a very hard puzzle to solve for both athletes. I can only imagine how hard Leon's camp right now is working on solving this problem, and I can see how hard Bilal's camp is working on solving this problem. It's that's why this fight is so fascinating. It's a battle of inches, and it will be incredible to watch how world-class martial artists will solve this problem. I'm like a little kid. I'm fascinated about this fight. I love these kind of matchups. I love a contrast of styles. I love a contrast of attitudes, contrast of backgrounds. It's isn't this how the UFC has started?
No
Karate
doubt
versus
about it.
boxing,
Yeah,
wrestling
absolutely.
versus
That was
jiu-jitsu.
the
Like
intrigue in the earlier days, right? To see how
exactly,
what was going to
exactly.
happen.
The kumite style, and to see again in the modern era of MMA, two contrasts clashing with each other. It's for me as an enthusiast and as a student of this game, I'm enjoying to watch these kind of matches. It's a beautiful experience to consume.
So you're saying that Leon needs to manage distance in terms of keeping it further apart. Belal wants to bring it in closer. So I guess you could assume Belal's a better wrestler than in this fight, right? We see Belal use it a lot more in his fights than Leon, but we've also seen Leon do quite well against quite dominant wrestlers like Kamaru Usman and Colby
Yeah.
Covington. Do you think Leon would be able to hold his own against Belal Muhammad if the fight were to get to the ground? Because I definitely think he could. But
People
Belal's great on the ground
underestimating
as well,
pe-
so.
people underestimating both of these guys. People underestimating Leon's ability to wrestle, the functionality of his wrestling, and people underestimating the persistence and the ability to take the fight to the deep trenches from Belal. People don't realize the strengths of both of these guys. I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying the majority of the fans, okay? Therefore, again, one is highly technical in his responses, whereas the other one is highly persistent in his pressure. Fuck, which one is gonna win again?
Sure. I think the striking is going to be very interesting as well. You obviously mentioned what both guys have to do, right? But just purely with the hands, how do you see this fight playing out? Like, what does Belal need to do to sort of keep up with Leon in the striking?
Man, when you're fighting somebody who is exceptional at one skill, okay? The goal, this is my perspective, okay? The goal is not to keep up with his strengths, with your opponent's strengths. The goal is to create scenarios and have strategy in place where your opponent won't have many chances to use his strength. Okay? That is the most high probable way of winning against the guys who have such an exceptional skill set in one area of fighting. This is a common strategy of warfare. Okay? If you go on, if two armies meet each other, one of the strategies of one army is to flank the opponent for the opponent not to use their strengths, because flanking areas are the weaknesses of the opponents. So if we transfer that mentality to MMA, and when you know one of the athletes has a powerful set of skills in striking, your goal is to create as many hazards, obstacles, diversions as possible for your opponent not to be able to functionally use their strengths. If you're trying to keep up with somebody who is exceptional at a particular skill, you will never catch up to their level, because there's a reason why they are exceptional at that skill. Something natural happens in them that separates them from others in that skill, if that makes sense. Therefore,
100%.
that's the strategy I would use. I wouldn't try to keep up with Leon in striking. Nevertheless, there will be a certain strategic approaches, certain techniques that will allow you not to drown in a realm of striking against Leon, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
it definitely makes sense. Yeah.
for example, in training, it may be slightly the opposite. When I used to train, one of my principle was in training, not all the time, but majority of time of when I was doing sparring, I would search for training partners who are exceptional at something, and I would try to beat them at that skill. For example, when I used to go against the guys who are much better than me in boxing, opposed to instantly taking them down and taking boxing away from them, I would try to beat them in their own strength, which would make my job much more difficult rather than me just creating diversion and taking them down. And etc., etc., etc. Like, somebody's good at kicking, I'm trying to beat him in kicking. If somebody's good at wrestling, I'm trying to beat him at wrestling. In training regimen, this is very healthy. In a fight, you do not want to risk this unless you want to create beautiful show and risk things and show people, look, I just beat a grappler in grappling, or I just beat a striker in striking. If you have that much confidence and that much faith in you, yeah, go risk. The reward will be big.
Now, this is where I can kind of see that you work with Belal, because I feel like Belal does exactly what you say not to do. I feel like Belal in fights very much sticks to his game. Like you see it in every fight. He's very much a well-rounded fighter because he wants to make it that way and put his opponents in uncomfortable positions. Is that accurate? What you just said, is that what Belal prides himself on doing?
Um, I mean, I see Bilal as a very intelligent, hardworking, simple man. He wouldn't from what I see now, at least in training, he doesn't deviate from his plans. He doesn't allow his pride or his ego take over during sparring sessions or during training. He's a great student. And honestly, he is one of the best human beings in my martial arts career that I have ever met.
Yeah.
The amount of hospitality that I'm receiving here in Chicago from him, the amount of care, um, the amount of reward I'm receiving from training him is unparalleled. And I never have received anything like this from a fighter that I ever have trained. This gentleman is on a different level with his humility, with his mannerism, with his character of being a good guy. It's incredible. It's I know a lot of majority of fighters, they may seem one way on a social media and cameras, but when you meet them, they're great guys. This one is exceptional guy. This is my opinion from these several weeks that I have been spending time with him. So that's just how I see him.
Why do you think so many people hate him? Because you say all this, and I think I don't know him, but he seems like a nice guy to me, and I have no reason to hate him. Why do so many people hate him? Because you see that, right? That people are like, Bilal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
get it. What do you think it could be?
I mean, if we look into the if we get emotions out of there, and if we look from the psychological point of view, um, for somebody to fear something or to hate something, majority of time is due to for somebody not knowing that person, for somebody to see something very different in that person that you don't have or you don't experience. Bilal probably creating discomfort to so many people on a subconscious level by being different. And at the beginning, being different is to create hate, to be the guy who's revolting to the social norms, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then what happened is slowly you change their minds and they actually now love you. How many times that happened with Conor McGregor? It happened with GSP. It happened with John Jones. It happened with Fedor. It happened with Khabib. For the longest time, people were hating him, hating him, hating him, and suddenly, boom, everybody started praising him. This is a normal thing. If we look into the history, for example, scientists, how many scientists at the beginning um, they were kicked out of the society? How many scientists they were made fun of at the beginning of their rise? This is a very normal thing. It's like at the beginning when people see you different, when people see you speaking differently, acting differently, and stepping away from their social norms, one of the first reactions will be is fear or hate.
That
You
makes
know,
sense
and
to me, especially people who know him, like fans on the internet, right? Because you're saying
mhm,
people who
mhm.
don't know him, that would be most just MMA fans on Twitter, which is a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
toxic place to be.
yeah, yeah. And it's okay. A lot of people complain about the fans. A lot of people complain about the how they would call them stupid, they would call them duty, and so many other bad words. But we have to understand what they're doing is a normal psychological reaction of people who are uneducated and alienated to a particular activity that they never have experienced at the full spectrum. And for them to make errors, we have to accept this. It's almost like I don't want to I don't want to disrespect fans, but it's almost like a getting mad at a child for the child either dropping something on your toe or biting you or something while they play with you. You know, like, oh,
Yeah.
you idiot! Why did you do that? That's stupid. Don't do
Right.
that. You cannot tell that to a child, even though some adults still do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a child. They they their limits, their boundaries of moral compass is still underdeveloped. Okay, so they discover the world by making errors, by testing the limits. So these fans who never experienced MMA, they're kids in this realm, in this world. So they testing things at the extreme levels. They're testing the boundaries. And a lot of these fans, they actually turn around and they learn as more they're into, especially the fans who go into the gym and experience first grappling match or first boxing match. They quickly calm down, they change their vision, and they accept. So that's why I don't get mad or frustrated when I see fans saying some outrageous things. It's a normal thing. On my own social media, I'm receiving some crazy hate messages in my DMs. I'm receiving some funny comments, and my goal is never to respond to them with the same attitude that they send me to, because and I don't even get mad at them. A lot of times I sit down and I laugh through them. It's really funny. And at the same time, it is very important, even when we receive bad comments. In my language, we have a saying: if there is a smoke, there is a fire. Okay. Not every bad comment that I receive, I just laugh it off and pass through it. I always ask myself, what gave these people to say this? What was the smoke for these
Right.
people to say this? And this way I'm able to analyze myself too. I'm like, hey, probably I gave something out, some kind of energy or some kind of actions out there for these fans to say some these outrageous things. So this always gives me a chance to analyze myself. And obviously, majority of the time is just silly errors of the observer. It's nothing about me, the one who gives the information, but sometimes you look, oh snap, this guy was right. Let me fix this or let me change this, and you evolve like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great perspective to have. Definitely eases the burden of all the haters a little bit. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think, yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So I
oh
think that's
yeah.
a good perspective to have. Let's wrap up here and ask a couple more questions about the fight, and then we'll wrap it up. So two fighters that have, that for the most part, they tend to go the full distance for more than half their fights, especially Belal. He's gone to quite a few more decisions. Would it be crazy to see that the fight can have a finish here? Like, are these guys capable of finishing each other, or do you think we'll see a full 5-round fight, very competitive?
The interesting thing is, as um as a student of the game, as an enthusiast of this sport, I want to see full 5 rounds because I want to study more. I want to collect more data.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially you.
Yeah. I would love to see
You need that film to
uh,
study.
yeah, higher volume of exchanges, uh for me to do my empirical testing and what's not.
Right, right.
It's my crazy science character. Okay, as a coach, as a friend of Bilal, I want to see the fight finish in the first round for him. Okay,
Sure.
but
Makes sense.
but if I observe this realistically with being unbiased, I know for sure both athletes are preparing to finish each other. They don't want to go to distance. They want to make a statement and they want to finish each other. And both athletes have enough tools to finish the fight either in the second or third round, if not in the fourth and fifth round, as we've seen. Okay. So percentage wise for this fight to end, I would think it would be either third or fourth round. And it would be 50-50% probably for both of the athletes in a terms of success of finishing the fight. It's I cannot really give more to one over the other because they literally have kryptonites to each other.
Coach, we do appreciate you spending some time sort of previewing this main event. It's always good to see it with a fresh set of eyes, especially someone as experienced as you in the game. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you so much, my friend. It was my pleasure to be here.
All right, guys, July 27th, UFC 304 in Manchester, Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards. You're not going to want to miss it.